I want to start today with a question. And I want you to actually think about the answer before I keep going. How long do you think you're going to live? Not how long you hope to live. Not how long you want to live. How long do you actually think your body is going to keep going? Because here's what I've found. Most people have a number in their head. And most people are wrong. Not by a little. By a decade or more. And that gap between how long you think you're going to live and how long you're actually going to live, that gap is quietly destroying retirement plans all across America. Right now. For real people who saved responsibly, who did everything they were supposed to do, who played by the rules their entire working lives. And today, I want to show you exactly how it happens, and what you can do about it before it's too late. Let me start with something that I think is genuinely one of the most misunderstood numbers in all of personal finance. You've probably heard that the average American life expectancy is around 79 years. You've seen it in the news. Maybe you've even used it to do some rough retirement math in your head. If I retire at 65, I've got about 14 years. So if I have X saved divided by 14 years, stop. That number, 79, is the wrong number. Completely wrong. And using it for retirement planning is like filling up your gas tank halfway for a road trip and assuming that's enough because you only looked at the first half of the map. Here's what 79 actually measures. It measures life expectancy from birth. And that number gets dragged down by infant mortality, by accidents in your 20s and 30s, by people who never made it to retirement at all. It has almost nothing to do with how long you're going to live once you've already reached 65 in reasonably good health. The number you actually need, the number that matters for retirement planning, is conditional life expectancy. How long does the average person live once they've already reached 65? And that number is completely different. According to the Social Security Administration, a 65-year-old man today can expect to live to 84. A 65-year-old woman can expect to live to 87. That's not 79. That's 84 or 87. Already 5 to 8 years more than what most people think. And that's just the average, meaning half of all 65-year-olds will live even longer than that. Think about what that means for your retirement math. If you plan for 14 years and you live 22, that's 8 years of retirement you didn't fund. 8 years where your savings are gone and you're living on Social Security alone. And I'm not talking about some extreme edge case here. I'm talking about statistically average outcomes. But here's where it gets even more interesting. And this is the part I want you to really pay attention to. Because if you're married, or if you're planning your retirement together with a partner, the numbers get even more dramatic. A 65-year-old couple, both relatively healthy, has a 53% chance that at least one of them will live past 90. More than half. There's a 22% chance that at least one of them reaches 95. And the median, the 50-50 point, for at least one spouse in a 65-year-old couple surviving, age 92. So if you're married and you're both 65 right now, the most likely scenario is that you're planning a retirement that needs to last at least 27 years. And a very realistic scenario is 30 years, and a completely possible scenario is 35 years or more. Now I want to show you why those extra years are so financially devastating. Because it's not just that you need more money in total. It's the math of what happens when you underestimate. And this is where I think people really need to sit down and pay attention. Researchers at the American College of Financial Services, working with Nationwide, published a study that found something that genuinely stopped me in my tracks when I read it. They found that extending your retirement by just 5 years, just 5, increases your risk of running out of money by 41% based on historical market returns. And when you factor in the lower projected returns that analysts are forecasting for the next decade, that same 5-year extension increases your risk of running out of money by more than 300%. 300% from 5 years. That's not a rounding error. That's not a footnote. That is the difference between a secure retirement and a financial catastrophe. And it happens because of how compounding works in reverse. Every year you live past your plan, you're not just spending an extra year of savings. You're spending it from a smaller and smaller pool, which reduces the amount left to generate returns, which accelerates the depletion. It's a feedback loop, and it's brutal. And I want to say something here that I think is important. You might be watching this and thinking, okay, Ryan, but I can just adjust if I need to. I'll spend less. I'll cut back. And look, to some extent, yes, that's true. But there's a problem with that thinking. And the problem is that the expenses that tend to balloon in your 80s and 90s are not the discretionary ones. They're not vacations. They're not restaurants. They're health care. They're medications. They're assisted living. They're home health aides. And you cannot simply decide to spend less on those things the way you can decide to eat at home instead of going out. Here's a number that I want you to hold on to. The average 65-year-old retiring today will spend approximately $172,500 on healthcare and medical expenses during retirement, not counting long-term care costs, according to Fidelity's 2025 data. That's for a single person. For a couple, Fidelity estimates that number at $315,000 in medical expenses for retirement, again, not including long-term care. But it gets worse as you age. A 65-year-old healthy couple spends about $17,000 a year on Medicare and healthcare in the first year of retirement. By age 85, if they live that long, that same couple is spending $55,000 a year on healthcare. That's more than triple. And healthcare inflation has been running at 5 to 7% per year, while your Social Security COLA this year was 2.8%. I was actually running these numbers the other day and I had to stop and look at them again. Because the math of a long retirement is not what most people picture. Most people picture retirement as this sort of stable plateau where you spend roughly the same amount every year. But a 30-year retirement is actually 3 distinct phases with very different financial demands. The early years, 65 to 75, tend to be the active years. More travel, more spending, more fun. Then the middle years, 75 to 85, where activity slows down but healthcare costs start rising. And then the late years, 85 and beyond, where healthcare and care costs can become the dominant expense in the budget. And this is the phase that almost nobody planned for because almost nobody thought they'd get there. Okay, so now let me talk about the awareness problem. Because I think what makes all of this so dangerous is not just the math. It's that most people genuinely don't know what they don't know. And there's actually a term for this that researchers use. They call it longevity literacy. And America's longevity literacy is, and I'm being polite here, terrible. The TIAA Institute surveyed thousands of Americans and asked a simple multiple-choice question. How long does the average 65-year-old live? And only 32% of people got it right. 32%. 2 out of 3 Americans don't know the answer to the single most important number in retirement planning. Another 35% underestimated. They thought people die earlier than they actually do. And 24% said they had no idea. You might say, okay, Ryan, so people are off by a few years, how bad can it be? And to that I say, let me show you. Workers who expect to live less than 10 years past retirement, who think retirement is a short sprint, only 50% of them save regularly. Workers who plan for 30 years or more in retirement, 71% save regularly. That's not a small difference. Your belief about how long you're going to live directly controls how seriously you take saving for retirement. Get that belief wrong and you're building on a cracked foundation. I mean, can you believe that? You could do literally everything else right. Pick the right investments, contribute consistently, avoid debt, and still run out of money because you just assumed you'd die earlier than you actually will. And here's something I think is really important to understand. The number of Americans living to 100, the Century Club, is expected to quadruple by 2054. From 101,000 centenarians today to 422,000, and medical advances are not slowing down. TIAA researchers recommend adding 10 years to whatever life expectancy you're currently planning for. Whatever number you have in your head right now, add 10 years. Because the downside of planning too short is running out of money. The downside of planning too long is dying with a little extra. And those two outcomes are not remotely comparable. So, what does this actually mean for what you should be doing right now? The first thing, and this is the foundation of everything else, is to recalibrate your planning horizon. If you're 55 right now and you're planning for a 20-year retirement, you need to be planning for at least 30, probably 35. And if your spouse is younger or healthier than you, plan for even longer. Because remember, it's not just your life expectancy that matters. It's the probability that at least one of you is still alive. A 65-year-old couple planning for only 20 years of retirement is, statistically speaking, planning to fail. The second thing, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is Social Security timing. I have said this before and I'll say it again. Delaying Social Security to 70 is one of the most powerful things you can do to protect against longevity risk. Every year you delay past full retirement age, your benefit grows by approximately 8%. That is a guaranteed 8% return on a benefit that is indexed to inflation and that you cannot outlive. For someone who lives to 90, which is increasingly common, the lifetime income difference between claiming at 62 versus waiting to 70 can be $200,000 or more. That is real money. And the higher your Social Security benefit, the less pressure you put on your savings to cover your expenses in those expensive late years. Third, and this is something a lot of people overlook, Think seriously about staying at least partially invested in equities well into retirement. I know that sounds counterintuitive. I know the instinct is to go conservative as you get older. But if you're planning for a 30-year retirement and you put everything in bonds or CDs on the day you retire, you're going to watch inflation eat your purchasing power alive over 3 decades. At 3% inflation, $80,000 a year in expenses today becomes $140,000 a year in 25 years. Your conservative portfolio needs to keep growing to fund that. Most modern target date funds keep 30 to 50% in equities even at age 70 and beyond. There's a reason for that. Fourth, the HSA. If you have access to a health savings account, use it aggressively and do not spend it down. The 2026 contribution limit is $4,400 for individuals and $8,750 for families. Contributions are tax-deductible. Growth is tax-free. Withdrawals for healthcare are tax-free. And healthcare, as we've established, is going to be your biggest and fastest-growing expense in the back half of retirement. An HSA used as an investment vehicle, not a spending account, can become one of the most valuable assets you have in your 80s. And fifth, and this one I think surprises people, consider whether working even part-time in your early retirement years is actually a smart financial decision, not just a necessity. Even $10,000 or $15,000 a year from part-time work during your 60s dramatically extends the life of your portfolio. Because every year you earn some income is a year you're not drawing down savings. And those years of preservation compound into dramatically more money available in your 80s when you genuinely can't work and genuinely need it most. Here's the thing that I want you to take away from today. Americans now say they believe they need $1.46 million to retire comfortably in 2026. That number is up $200,000 from just last year. And yet the median savings for someone aged 55 to 64, the people on the doorstep of retirement right now, is $185,000. Not $1.46 million, $185,000. That gap is staggering. And a big part of why it exists is because people underestimated how long they were going to need that money to last. 3 in 4 Americans fear running out of money before they run out of time. And that fear, I want to be honest with you, is rational. It is based on real math. The average American is on track to outlive their savings by 8 to 10 years. 8 to 10 years of living on Social Security alone after everything else is gone. That is not a comfortable retirement. That is a financial emergency that unfolds slowly over nearly a decade. You cannot fix this problem after it happens. You can only prevent it now by taking seriously a number that most people haven't looked at honestly. How long are you actually going to live? Not how long you think, not how long you hope. What do the actual numbers say? Go to ssa.gov right now. They have a free life expectancy calculator. Put in your age and your gender. Then add 10 years to whatever number it gives you. That's your planning horizon. Build your retirement around that number. And then ask yourself honestly, does my current plan fund that many years? Because if the answer is no, and for most Americans the answer is no, now is the time to know it. Not at 82 when the accounts are running dry. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what number do you have in your head for how long you'll live? And has this video changed it? I genuinely want to know. Because this is the conversation that most people never have until it's too late to change anything. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone you care about. This is exactly the kind of thing that changes financial outcomes when people hear it early enough. Subscribe and like if you want to keep seeing this kind of honest breakdown. Thank you so much. Wish you a very nice day. Take care.